6 o'clock TV hour, don't get caught in foreign tower, slash and burn, return, listen to yourself churn, lock him in uniform and book burning, bloodletting, every motive escalate, automotive incinerate, light a candle, light a motive, step down, watch a heel crush, oh this means no fear, cavalier, renegade and steer clear, a tournament of lies, offer me solutions, offer me alternatives, and I decline. Yes. Thank you, 90s rock band REM. We agree with you. It is the end of the world as we know it. But do we? I'm not so sure we all do feel fine. In fact, lately, fine has felt like this overly idealistic aim of sorts. Many of us would love to feel fine. What an improvement that might be. As we approach now the 2-year mark of the coronavirus, some of people are still catching up to the intro there. So that whole thing was like one of the verses of that song. I invite you to go read them later. Like much of the lyrics from the 90s, it doesn't make any sense. As we approach the 2-year mark of the coronavirus here in the States, and as we stumble through the Omicron wave, I think it's not unreasonable to say it feels like the end of the world as we once knew it. Speaking of the end of the world, many of us might have watched the new Netflix film, Don't Look Up. Yet another reminder of just how obsessed Hollywood has become with these end of world movies. In fact, I looked it up. Almost 100 films of this genre came out in the decade between 2010 and 2019, dwarfing all totals from previous decades. These are often called apocalyptic movies, where humanity faces extinction from forces like climate change, asteroids, nuclear holocaust, resource depletion, pandemics, zombies, revolting robots. Revolting robots? Is that right? Like robots that are disgusting? No, robots that like revolt. Suddenly that word sounded really weird to me. Robots that just take over. Alien invasions, all of these end of world scenarios. And yet, if I can put my high and mighty hat on of you're using that word wrong. Did it go on?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And I often go steampunk when I get all high and mighty. I'd like to point out that apocalypse doesn't mean catastrophe or total destruction, as is often imagined, but rather it means to reveal or unveil. This term, is the hat still on? I can't tell.
No,
you.
I took it
Okay,
off.
that's off. This is great.
I like the surprise in that job.
So the term here, apocalypse, this comes from this ancient genre of literature. And it wasn't about the end of the world per se, but about the end of the world as is currently known or understood, which is to say something significant happens and it pulls apart a curtain to reveal truth. Apocalyptic events break the chains of illusion. They loosen the grip of oppressive power. We might have thought one thing was true, or we might have suffered under these people in power, but then an apocalyptic event occurs and we see what is really real and what is truly true. This is apocalypse. Understood like this, maybe we could think of apocalyptic events as like an invasion of sorts, where an idea or a manifestation of reality, it breaks into our consciousness and it pries apart the shackles on our mind, daring us to look the other way, forcing us to confront new perspectives, challenging us to question our previously held answers. St. Paul once wrote about the apocalyptic event of Jesus being understood to be the Messiah, or the Christ. In his letter to the churches in Galatia, he wrote about this transition from a religion of rituals and laws to a life of liberation and freedom. And I'll read just a small portion here from the 3rd chapter of Galatians, verse 23. Before the coming of this faith, we were guarded under the law, locked up until the faith that was to come would be revealed. That's the Greek word apocalyptic. The law was our spiritual guardian until Christ. But now that faith has come, we're no longer under such a guardian. The idea here is that we were locked up under this watchful, controlling gaze of a guardian known as religious law. We were told what to believe. We were told how to act. all under this misguided notion that it was for our own well-being and that God required it. And yet, according to the first Christians, God breaks in, disguised as Jesus, this rabbi from Nazareth, and sets us free, revealing that there's a better way. So you might say it like this: invasion events, when they are apocalyptic, unveil the truth that can set us free. Invasion events, when they are apocalyptic, unveil truth that can set us free. Now, with that in mind, what then might have been unveiled 1 year ago, this past week, from the invasion on January 6th? This last Thursday was the 1-year anniversary of the right-wing riot that stormed the Capitol building in an effort to disrupt the democratic process of confirming the election results. And this wasn't just purely a political or economical event, but if we are to take seriously, according to the signs and the banners vigorously waved, if we are to listen to the rally cries that were earnestly shouted, and if we're to pay attention to the sacrilegious prayers vomited from the mouths of those leading the charge, this was a religiously motivated mob. And in this light, I suggest that the January 6th riot was apocalyptic, in that it revealed how something rotten and foul sits at the root of much of what passes for Christianity in America. And it depresses me, the very thought. And yet, I think those who participated in the riot, they did so because they believed their faith compelled them to. Think about that for a minute. Compelled by their faith, they acted as such. Somehow the religion that was created, birthed, organized, built upon the life and the teachings of an individual who was committed to things like the care of the sick, compassion for the poor, justice for the oppressed, love for our enemies, somehow that has become the empty calorie diet energizing the disease known as Christian nationalism. That such a crowd on January 6th was comprised of overwhelmingly white Christians shocked absolutely no one. In fact, Rotten Tomatoes called it, quote, the least surprising, most predictable apocalyptic movie of the year. Easily M. Night Shyamalan Man's laziest piece of writing. Just going to pause here so you can take in this graphic. Even still, though most of the world outside the small sliver of evangelical Christianity, most of the world outside of that sliver has been smelling this foul stench for years. Even in light of that, I still believe that the Capitol riot was apocalyptic in nature. This invasion that unveiled, for what feels like the millionth time, I don't know, unveiled just how far off course American evangelical Christianity has found themselves. A few days after the riot, the Pope actually said this, quote, I thank God that since this has broken out, one can see well what happened, because in this way a remedy can be found. Now, I really do appreciate your optimism, Your Holiness, because some days I wonder, can a remedy be found? Is there a path back from the wilderness of this unholy unity of Christianity, white supremacy, misogyny, power, and greed? And my honest answer some days is, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe Christianity, at least as we know it, is irredeemable. In fact, I know for many individuals that is certainly the case. They've left the label behind long ago for really good reasons. But then I also know there are others that are working overtime to insist that we can save this sinking ship. Personally, I can probably convince myself to go one way or the other depending on the day of the week. But do you know what can't ever be lost? What can't ever be damaged beyond repair or misrepresented beyond recognition? Kindness, mercy, grace, love, care for neighbor, compassion for enemy, generosity. These, I believe, will always be with us, as will those who seek it and live it and say yes to it, come what may. And for me, I believe that this is what Jesus lived and died for. The belief that you and I can, through the power of love, push back the forces of darkness and despair. And whether that happens within the confines of religion or not doesn't really seem to matter. So yeah, January 6th will likely be remembered in our country as a day of fear and unrest. And yet, for the heritage of our religion, did you know that January 6th has also long been designated as a day to celebrate surprise and manifestation? Known as Epiphany, January 6th marks the end of the 12 days of Christmas, and it celebrates how God is revealed, apocalyptoed, in our world. Epiphany proclaims that the divine can and does break into the reality of humanity. Unlike the Greek worldview, where all things spirit and matter are separate, and unlike the Roman worldview, where the gods have their realm and we have ours, early Christians insisted that these two spaces live in harmony with one another, and that wherever love, forgiveness, grace, compassion, or justice occurred, that was heaven breaking into earth. They believed in this reality, and they believed in the capacity of these moments of surprise and manifestation, these epiphanies of God. They insisted that goodness and mercy can and do show up unexpectedly, reminding us to fear not. During Epiphany, the story most often told comes from Matthew's gospel about the wise men or the magi coming from the east in search of a baby born who would be king. But what the songs and the Sunday school lessons don't often teach us is that these sorcerers from afar could not have been farther removed from the Jewish religion of the day. They were not only not believers of the Jewish religion, they were practitioners of their own religion and spirituality. And so if you combine that with Mary, the mother of Jesus, an unmarried pregnant girl with no power and no name, and then if you dash in a bit of shepherds, these dirty outcasts, certainly not clean enough for any temple ceremony, what we have is this kaleidoscopic apocalypse revealing the presence of God in the forgotten, the foreign, and the feared. It's as though Jesus' birth announcement would read, "You can keep your religious ideas and belief systems. I'll be over here witnessing to the goodness of God crashing into earth in the most unexpected ways." Apocalypse, invasion, epiphany. Unveiling what is true, pulling back the curtain, divine surprises. Maybe it is the end of the world as we knew it. But maybe it's a version of the world that needed to die. Or maybe this massive upheaval happening all around us doesn't have to be terrifying signs of chaos and catastrophe. Maybe instead they are invitations to see and imagine and create a whole new kind of world. A world where we hold our loved ones tight and our beliefs an invitation to create a new kind of world. A world where we hold our loved ones tight, but we hold our beliefs and our prejudices loose. A world where we forgive offense quickly and extend grace without question. A world where we stop trying to convert people to think as we do, and instead we ask, where are the Magi's, the Marys, and the misfits? the ones who see the world in a different way and can show me. Who births light and life into the world for the betterment of others? Who is overlooked and underrepresented, and how can we change that? Is this a world that we could imagine creating? So as we begin a new year, as far as Sojourn goes, I can't promise you what things will look like. I don't know. I don't know when we'll be back in person. I don't know if things will ever feel like they used to, with thriving kids ministries and booming small groups and packed worship auditoriums. I don't know. But what I can promise is that we'll never stop affirming that you are a beloved child of God, full stop. We'll never stop being a soft landing place for those whom religion has beaten and bruised. We'll never stop chasing after the light or following love, trusting that it truly never fails. We'll never stop insisting that it all belongs. And we'll never stop asking, how can we move toward wholeness in both our own lives as individuals and then together as a society? And we'll do it all as best as we can together. And that, my friends, that does make me feel fine. Amen.